What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Matt Chat. My name is Kyle, and today I'm going to be talking some Big Brother, and I'm going to be ranking every player from Big Brother 27. Now, I want to start off by saying I do keep up with the live feeds. I do not watch them, but I try to keep up with them as much as possible, so take my opinion for whatever you think it's worth. Second of all, I just want to thank everybody real quick for watching my videos. We just hit 50 subscribers, which isn't a ton, but I really, really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to make these videos, so I appreciate everybody who's been watching them. And with that, I'm going to get into it. At number 17, I have Adrian. It might seem a little bit crazy to have Adrian at the very bottom, but I do genuinely think that he played the worst game on this season. He was an actively passive player. He was intentionally not inserting himself into alliances or going out there and trying to make tight relationships with people. He had a hard time believing people. He had poor reads on the game. He hated when people were lying. I think he tried to be the goofy, under the radar guy that kind of slips by, but I don't think that strategy really works anymore. So, nothing about Adrian's game I really liked. He easily became a pawn. He just made it too easy for people to want to get rid of him. In his eviction week, he did have 4 people on his side, but he went home because he wasn't important enough to anybody's game. Vince and Zach were afraid to let Lauren break a tie, or they didn't want Lauren to break a tie, so they just let him go. And to me, that is a sign of a bad player. Number 16, I have Zay, the first boot of the season. I think Zay overall was actually a pretty decent first boot. I think that this cast overall was actually pretty bad overall, but I think the people who went home early were actually not terrible for early boots. He was active, he was trying to make allies, he put together an all guys alliance, which isn't groundbreaking or anything, but they were loyal to him. It was effective. He even got the likes of Kelly and Adrian on his side by the end of it as well. Going after Rachel was a bad decision, don't get me wrong. Publicly fighting her and going against her is a terrible, terrible look and a terrible strategic move. But I don't think it really changed much at the time of it happening. I think that he was already on his way out the door. And he almost stayed. It was a relatively close vote. It was 9-5. So he did have 5 people on his side. I do think he made a mistake in whatever he did that made him lose someone like Riley. But nevertheless, he had 5 people on his side, which is a lot more than you could say for a lot of other people, especially a first boot. So I have Zay just below the bottom at number 16. For number 15, I have Amy. I don't really know what I'm supposed to make of Amy's game. She seemed perfectly nice, but was a very, very easy target. I think that's just kind of the unfortunate nature of being an older woman in modern Big Brother, is that you are going to probably be an early target, and that's not Amy's fault. She did have very close allies. Someone like Rachel was really championing her. Jimmy, kind of by association, even though, yeah, she went home on his HOH week, which that's not great. And that kind of goes to show how easy of a pawn she was, how easy of a target she was to put up on the block. No one, aside from Rachel, was really going to be mad. She wasn't that close to going home in week 1, but, like I said, it was a 9-5 vote, so she did have 5 people voting against her. She actually has the most votes against her in a season ever, with 18, which is kind of crazy, especially for a second boot. She only was there for 2 weeks and got 18 votes. So she had some allies, but it wasn't nearly enough. So I have Amy at number 15. Now at number 14, we are jumping way ahead here, but I think this person played an awful game, and that is Keanu. It is kind of crazy to put the 5th place player this low, but I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Keanu was a target as early as week 1. People like Rachel were campaigning for him to go up as a replacement nominee, and Vince ultimately didn't decide to, but he was a target from way early on. He needed 4 straight weeks of comp wins to survive, and needed a twist as well to get Casey to win him that veto. He antagonized people and really did nothing to make people to want to work with him. Even his allies like Riley and Vince were targeting him. He did show an ability to adapt, though. He repaired his relationship with Ashley later on in the game, and then Rachel towards the beginning of the game. He even had a good relationship with someone like Kelly. He was undyingly loyal to Vince, but then put Vince up on the block on his HOH over Lauren, which didn't really make any sense. I know that he had been burned by Vince, but in his mind, he was wanting to still go farther with Vince, and he had other choices to put on the block. So that was a terrible strategic decision. He was only on the block at the eviction twice. He survived once, barely. Would have gone home if it was any other opportunity before that. And then by the time he goes, he still trusts Vince. Vince wins HOH. Keanu thinks he's safe. Somehow, he just didn't get the picture. At no point in the game did he ever really grasp what was going on in the house. He would believe things that were lies. He would not trust people who were telling him the truth. And he would have been evicted in the first few weeks had it not been for competition. So I don't have any problem, honestly, putting him this low. I do understand if you would have him higher. But just looking at it, I'm not impressed with Keanu's game at all. As entertaining as he was, not a good game on this season. Now at number 13, a similar thing here, I have Kelly. Kelly was one of the biggest early block stars I can recall. She volunteered for the block basically every week, which was terrible because then that just makes you more likely to go up in the block in the following weeks. And then she was surprised why people kept putting her up on the block. It's like, do you not realize that you're the one volunteering for it? She was very nearly the boot in week 1, and she needed 3 straight rounds of safety. I don't know if she would have necessarily gone home at all those opportunities, but it was still a dicey situation. She was not in good social standing. She was actively pushing people away because of her odd behavior in the house. She disappeared for a little while after that, but she was always on the radar whenever Vince was HOH. Her supposed ride or die early on in the season. I don't know what happened there, but their relationship went south very quickly. She was tight with Ava and Lauren. She was just aligned with people who really had no influence in the mid to late game. And this is why I put her above Keanu, is because she had, I think, more closer allies. She really did kind of have a group, whereas Keanu was kind of out on his own. And I also think that Kelly had better reads overall. She was just never able to do anything about it in the game. She nearly stayed in her eviction week, but was evicted over Keanu, which I do think was crazy. It was good on her that the vote went to a tie, but also not good on her that Vince broke the tie and kept Keanu over her. So like I said, she had some decent reads and she had some decent allies, but she was supposed to go in the early weeks, and I think that she would be an early boot on any other season, and the blockbuster was a real benefit for her. So I have her all the way down here at number 13. Now, coming in at number 12, I have Jimmy. I think a lot of people would probably have Jimmy lower, but I think he played a stronger game than the people we've talked about so far. It's not saying much, but I do believe so. He was more active than Kelly and a little bit more with it than Keanu. He had his hands in too many jars, though, and he started to cause his allies to not trust him. He put the spotlight on himself unnecessarily with his crazy speeches. Even when it was the first week, he just stood up at the veto ceremony. He wasn't HOH, he didn't win the veto, and started talking to Keanu, who also had nothing to do with anything that was going on. And then when he did go home, he couldn't convince his strongest allies to not put him on the block, which was horrible. And I know he gave them reason to do so, but it's still bad on him that he wasn't able to convince them. I think it was perhaps a worse move on their behalf, but it's still a bad move on Jimmy. He still had people fighting for him, though, the likes of Rachel and Ashley, even though she didn't want to vote to keep him, but he at least had people who were willing and going to bat for him. I didn't even mention his HOH, where he puts Amy on the block and sends her home, which was bad. But like I said, even though he didn't play a great game, I do think that it was a little bit better. He was in a pretty decent position for those first few weeks, and he was making an active effort to be in a strong position. So I have him a little bit higher here at number 12. Now at number 11, I have a pretty difficult player to rank, in my opinion, because they started off the game pretty strong, but also made some terrible moves. and that is Mickie. Mickie was playing one of the best games for the first few weeks of the season. She was aligned with nearly everybody and seemed to be getting her way on a lot of things, but she wasn't drawing attention to herself like Jimmy was or even like Vince was. She was key in creating the melting pot, which was a powerful alliance early on. It was comprised of a lot of influential people in the early game. She won a power at the second HOH and kept it secret enough to where she could overthrow Riley. But I think she played that week wrong. I think that she should have put Riley on the block, and for whatever reason, she didn't want to target him. She perhaps got a little unlucky that her target, Keanu, won the veto that week, but nevertheless, that's no excuse to put one of your closest allies on the block when you had so many other options to put in their place. So evicting Jimmy, like I said, whether or not Jimmy actually gave them reason to get rid of him, I still think was a mistake when you had Catherine and Lauren and those types of people that you could have put on the block, and it would have been a lot safer and put Mickie in a better position going forward. Because after Jimmy goes, Mickie is really on the run. She survives the next week, but on Rachel's HOH, she would have gone home if she didn't win the blockbuster. On Vince's HOH in week 7, she would have gone home if she didn't win the veto. And then she goes home next to Ashley in a situation where she goes home in any scenario. So without comp wins, she would have gone home much earlier, and part of it was because of her actively bad positioning, and I do think that she had some wrong reads on the house, so it seemed, even when she went home, she looked blindsided, so to me, she didn't really ever look like she knew what was going on after those great first few weeks. She kind of lost her grip on what was going on and just ultimately didn't play a very strong game. Like I said, she would have gone home a lot earlier. Was impressed with her in the first few weeks, but the actively bad decisions kind of tank her ranking here a little bit. All right, now these next few players, I was really conflicted on the order to put them in, so you could have them in an entirely different order, and I would believe you. But at number 10, I am going to go with Catherine. And the thing about Catherine, the reason why I put her down a little bit lower, is because I think that she was a little bit too passive. So it seemed to me, where she had a great core, a great group of people, where she was aligned with Riley and Lauren, people who were loyal to her. I don't know if she made a lot of effort to align with people, or at least even connect with people outside of her group. She kind of seemed to be a little bit on the outs of that, and she was getting into it with people for no reason, like when she was arguing with Ashley, I think it was, at one of the veto ceremonies. That was not a great look. And now, I do think that Catherine was playing optimally for most of this game, but I do love that, but I just don't know what there is to go off of. Like, I don't feel like I saw a lot of her game, and I don't know how much influence she really had in the house either, because yeah, she loses Riley in a really, really close vote, and then after that, she's on the outs, and she just is kind of an easy boot. I will credit her for not being the initial target that next week, but like I said, I just don't know what there is to her game. I think that she was just fine, and so I have her here at number 10, but you could convince me that she could be higher. I just really don't have a lot to say about her. Now, at number 9, I have someone who arguably made the worst decision of this season. It's hard to be any worse than this, but I also think that they played a really strong early game, and that is Zach. Zach was in arguably the best position for the first few weeks. He looked like he was in a great spot to run the game, or at least go very, very deep. And then all of a sudden, things went south. But he was aligned with Lauren and Morgan and Vince, and he was aligned with all the guys. He seemed like he had a really tight grip on the social game. I think that he got pretty unlucky with the fact that Ava won the week 5 HOH, which was one of the only people who would have even thought about targeting him that early on in the game. So I do have to say that he got very unlucky with that comp result. But he had something that he could have saved himself with. He had guaranteed safety and chose not to use it, which is awful. That is an awful, awful choice on his behalf, and I don't know why he did it. I know he was afraid that Morgan was going to go on the block, but I mean, I hope that choice was worth it. I don't know. That's something that I would never do if I was in his situation. But even then, he still kind of had some people on his side. It was kind of a toss up as to who was going to go home between him and Vince. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Keanu would have gone home easily had he lost the blockbuster. So I do think that Zach got pretty unlucky with the comp results that played out that week, but that's no excuse for not using the power to save yourself. That being said, I was impressed with what I saw from Zach early on in the season. So to me, he was strong enough to be up here at number 9. Now at number 8, I have a very divisive player, but someone who I think really was in a great spot throughout most of this season, and that is Riley. Riley is obviously not the greatest player in the world. He didn't really seem to know the game that well, but that doesn't negate the fact that he was in a great spot. He started off early, aligning with the guys. He had Catherine and Lauren. He seemed to be doing great. And it got to the point where I actually thought there was a chance that Riley could have dominated the season, or at least been in the position to be able to pick who went home each week. He was set up so well. I think that he got very unlucky that his HOH got overthrown. It is Big Brother, so that kind of stuff does happen. But it really did derail his game because he wasn't able to get out the people that were trying to go after him. Someone like Ashley or Morgan, who were actively going against him, he didn't have the opportunity to get them out, even though he won power. I think that back-to-back Ava and Rachel HOHs was also pretty bad for him because those were people that he was not particularly aligned with. He did stay off the block during Ava's HOH, which was impressive. And then he was almost not even going to go up on Rachel's HOH. It took a lot of work for him to go up there. And then even still, he was evicted in a 5-4 vote. He had so many people on his side in one of the craziest evictions of all time. It was back and forth until the last second. So I do think that Riley got unfortunate comp results and had a strong hold on the game for whatever reason. People loved Riley. People were wanting to work with him and pull him into all sorts of alliances, even though I don't think it was in their best interest to do so. So whatever Riley did to make people want to work with him, I thought was really, really great on his behalf. I don't know if he was always going to make the right strategic decisions. He didn't seem like that type of player to me, but he was in such a great spot and just got sniped out in a really insane way. So I think Riley is deserving of being up in the top half here. All right, now we're moving on to a new group of people that I thought was also pretty difficult to rank. They could be in a lot of different orders, but this is how I think they should be. And at number 7, I have Lauren. Lauren is most known for being very indecisive, for the fact that she really had trouble making decisions on her own. But I think that she played a pretty solid game. Lauren laid pretty low early on. She wasn't on anybody's radar. She won the week 3 HOH, which I don't think she needed to at all. She shouldn't have, because clearly she had trouble making decisions, and I don't think that the ones that she made were necessarily the best ones for her. I think that she made decisions that went against her best interest. She was trying to straddle the line between the Vince and Zach side of things and the Riley Catherine side of things, and she really seemed to make the wrong decisions, like winning the veto, taking Vince off the block, even though she was repeatedly told by Catherine to not use it, and she was told by Riley to use it, which is actually a knock on Riley that I should have mentioned. He begged for her to use the veto the week that he went home. I understand why Lauren did it, but that week turned out to be a disaster for her, and it put her in a situation where she really had to rely on Vince for the rest of the game because not a lot of people were looking out for her. Morgan was actively targeting her. Keanu should have targeted her on his HOH and just didn't. She just came off as a really wishy-washy strategic thinker. She looked like someone who was being controlled and manipulated throughout the game, and by all accounts, I think she was. She got outplayed by Morgan at the final 7, where she convinced Vince to put Lauren up on the block. And there was a great chance she was going to go home if she did win the blockbuster, and then she goes home immediately following that on Rachel's HOH. So even her closest ally that she was relying on pretty much the whole game turned on her. She did have something going on with Ava and Kelly, but as I've mentioned, those weren't necessarily influential players that were going to win comps to keep her safe. It just wasn't enough. So while I think that Lauren played a pretty solid game, I do think that she made decisions that actively put her in worse positions. Credit to her for being the last one to touch the block and going as long as she did without touching the block. But still, I don't think that this was a strong game, but it was worthy of being here at number 7. It's better than what we've talked about so far. Now, number 6, I have Will. Will played a pretty decent game, especially for someone older. He really fit in socially and was one of the better social players of the season. I think the thing that's holding Will back is that he was quite passive. I think he seemed like he needed a lot of other people to kind of pull him in different directions and bring him into things, which he was. He was brought into a lot of alliances. He was included in the Burger Boys over Adrian and Jimmy, which was surprising to me. He was included in the judges because he had tight relationships with Ashley and Rachel, and those relationships served him very well throughout the game. I think in his boot week, it was really surprising that he went home. He was outplayed significantly by Ashley. I know that they wanted to take him out because they were afraid that he would win the game, and he may have had a really good shot because he had a great social game, but you can take him out at the final 4 or final 3. He's never going to win a challenge. So his challenge, lack of ability, as well as his passiveness, I think keeps him down a little bit. But I think overall he played a really solid game. I think he made good decisions for his game, was great socially, so he's here at number 6. Now at number 5, I have someone who started off the game strong. We've said that a lot about a lot of people so far, but then kind of faltered a little bit later on, and that is Ava. Early on, people were thinking that Ava was playing a great game, and she was. She was in a great spot. She did a great job at flipping Vince and Zach at the Adrian vote and getting them to vote out Adrian and keep Will around. That was great for her game. I think she had one of the more successful HOHs of the season, going against Vince and Zach and having the guts to take that shot and landing it was really, really good. It showed a killer instinct on her behalf, and it showed that she was making optimal moves. I think where her game kind of started to go downhill was when she was not included in the Judges Alliance. That alliance really controlled the game from the final 12 on, and Ava being on the outside of it, it was mostly just a matter of time until she went home. She was used as a pawn for several weeks in the late game and had nobody who wanted to take her to the end, probably outside of Kelly and maybe Lauren as well. But as I've talked about, those aren't people that are going to influence decisions. And then once they went home, Ava really had no shot to get to the end. Her win equity, I think, is questionable as well. I don't know who she beats. She maybe beats Vince, but outside of that, I'm not sure. I also have to mention her bad decision making at the White Locust twist. She should have picked Rachel first. Rachel would have lost anyway, probably, but still, I don't know why she picked Vince. I think her reasoning was all wrong there, and her game really derailed after that point because losing Rachel, she just really seemed to be lost in the game and was dragged along until she was cut at the final 4. So, strong early game, but a little dicey middle and end game, and so she's here at number 5. All right, now we're at top 4. This seemed like the clear top 4 to me. And starting it off, I have Rachel. Rachel had to play a difficult game from the start, different than everyone else, because she was the only returnee and a winner, no less. She wasn't involved in the more influential groups early on, but she built a strong core. The people who were loyal to Rachel were loyal to Rachel, and it kind of remained that way through most of the game. She got her way at the first week, going against Zay and getting him out, but then proceeded to lose multiple allies in the following weeks. She didn't have much influence in the game, but she wasn't targeted either, and she has to receive a lot of credit for that. She fought with Keanu, but then created a strong bond with him, and this showed an improvement in her game. It showed that she was learning from her previous mistakes, and she was definitely playing her best game that she's ever played on this show. She played optimally at basically every turn. She had arguably the most successful HOH of the season, created the Judges Alliance and evicted the person who could have dominated the game in Riley. She was in a great spot in the short term, but probably would have gone home sooner than later due to how the comps played out. But that didn't matter anyway because she got twist screwed. She went home in one of the weirdest weeks in Big Brother history where there was no nominees, no vote, no veto, nothing. She was just taken out because of a competition from a format that isn't even really the show. It was a spin-off season. So she never got nominated. She never got a vote against her as a winner. That's really impressive. And like I said, she was playing her best game. I was really impressed with Rachel this season, especially in the second half of her game. So she is here at number 4 and could arguably be even higher, but she's here at number 4 for me. Now at number 3, I have a difficult player to rank, a frustrating player to rank, and that is Vince. There's so much to say about Vince, but not a lot that hasn't already been said. It's hard to parse through his game because he did great social work, but the fact that he won so many competitions may have made him look better than he actually was. He was my winner pick going into the season, but you could tell right away he lacked a killer instinct. He made the easy decision at basically every turn, and that led him to make a lot of wrong decisions as well. He put his early game final 2, Kelly, on the block week 1, voted out Adrian because he didn't want Lauren to have to break a tie. What even is that reasoning? So he made a lot of mistakes early on. But I have to give him credit for his extremely strong social game. He was aligned with so many people, and for some reason they didn't want to get rid of him, despite the fact that he kept lying to them and he was crying all the time. I don't know what he was doing, but it was effective. He did sometimes come off as slimy, though, and that drew the attention of the likes of Rachel and Ava. He went on the block 3 out of 4 weeks at one point. He survived over Zach, which was really impressive, and he got Lauren to use the veto on him against her best interest, so it showed that he was still playing a great social game. He mended his relationship with Rachel and was included in on the judges, which was really surprising, and it did show Vincent's influence in the game. However, he did get caught playing both sides. People knew what he was doing, and he was put on the block by Keanu, which would have been disastrous to go home on his HOH. And he would have gone home against Ashley had Mickey won the blockbuster, so that week was really dicey for him. But following that, he was in a strong position. He played the White Locust round very well, I thought. He got everything he wanted, despite the fact that it caused Morgan to kind of not trust him. He kept Lauren, which was great for his game, and still mended his relationship with Morgan after that. But he did eventually give himself up to Morgan, basically, and was willing to lose Lauren. He put Lauren up on his HOH, which showed that Morgan was really the one in control. It was a great move to evict Keanu. I thought it was a bad move to evict Ava. Ashley, we'll get to her, did a lot of great social work to be able to get to the final 3, and Vince really bought into the judges, and I thought that that was a big mistake to evict Ava because she would have been easier to beat in competitions, I think, and probably easier to beat at the end as well. So that showed that Vince was making the wrong strategic decisions. He had basically no win equity by the end, and yet still almost got 3rd place. He lost Morgan to Ashley. Morgan was going to evict him if she won the final HOH, despite him being an easier person to beat, which is kind of crazy to me. He didn't play a game that made anyone wanted to vote for him. That's the key thing here. No one wanted to vote for Vince by the end of it. He was impressive socially, but he used his influence and social control suboptimally at a lot of turns. So Vince is a really mixed bag. Bad strategist, but somehow a good social player. I think that he was worthy of being number 3, but I don't feel great about it. Now at number 2, I have Morgan. I thought Morgan was maybe playing the best game for the first few weeks. She was in all of the major alliances early on. She had really close bonds, specifically with Zach, Jimmy, and Mickey. She kind of sabotaged herself with the Jimmy week, however. That was a bad move on her behalf. She would have been the target on that Riley HOH week, I think, and she was also very close to going home on Rachel's HOH. The Judges Alliance saved her, But even then, she was still almost went home. Rachel was willing to let her go. But after this, Morgan's game really popped. She strengthened her relationship with Vince and started her unprecedented streak of safety. She strong-armed Vince into taking her side and really controlled his game. She was able to dictate pretty much the entire end game because of competition wins. It allowed her to have all the say in what happened. However, Ashley was her blind spot. She would have made the suboptimal choice in bringing her to the end. I still think Morgan probably wins that, but it's like if you're going to win 4-3 or 6-1, why not go with 6-1? That's the optimal choice there. But overall, Morgan played a pretty dominant game, especially in the second half. A lot of that came because of comp wins. She had a bit of a dicey middle game, but she was really impressive the way that she took over Vince's game. Really impressive that Zach did not want to use his power so that Morgan would not go up on the block. That shows her extremely good relationships with those people and the power that she had over them. So Morgan was very, very close to being number one, but I have her here at number 2. And at number 1, I have the winner of the season, Ashley. It wasn't until the end of the season that I could truly appreciate Ashley's game. She showed that even in the most comp-dominant season we've ever had, a pure social game can still prevail. Having said that, Ashley started off the game in a dicey spot due to Showergate. Not totally sure if she would have been evicted that week if she didn't win the veto, but still, she was on the block early on. But despite that, she laid low and managed to avoid the block, where most of the other people who were going on the block early continued to be on the block. So that showed Ashley's great social game right from the start. She had great bonds with Rachel and Will, Ava to a certain extent, and had Mickey and Morgan looking out for her as well. She wasn't necessarily in the core influential group, but she had people in that group looking out for her. I do think that she was very fortunate that Mickey overthrew Riley's HOH because Riley was coming after her. I think a lot of that was due to the accomplice twist that put a target on Ashley right away. But still, I do think that she got fortunate with that because she could have very easily gone home that week if Riley was not overthrown. The Judges Alliance was amazing for her game. It linked her 2 closest allies with 2 of the best competitors of the season. Week 6 went pretty much as perfectly as it could have for her. Getting rid of Riley was the best thing for her game. She had a bit of a freak out when Keanu put her on the block. That was a social misstep, but really worked to repair that relationship and was effective in doing so. The judges kept strong after Rachel's elimination. To my surprise, I thought that was a little bit less of a real alliance than it turned out to be. She flipped the vote against Will at the final 8, which was extremely impressive. She should have gone home there and didn't. She continued to push the judges, which somehow worked. She should have gone home against Ava and Will, and she just didn't. And I don't know why, but she had a great social game and influenced things subtly to where she got people to want to keep her. She even got Morgan to want to take her to the end, but made the move to take her out, which was a great, great decision. She had a great read on the game and a great read on the jury throughout the whole game, and I think that was her superpower. Her game seemed intentional, and she was always active and working towards the next step. Whatever round she was in, she was working towards the next round. And she made it through the whole game without hardly needing competition wins. She won one right at the beginning and one right at the end, and that was all she needed. And there's nothing more impressive to me than surviving when you aren't winning competitions, especially when it is the right move to get rid of you at so many opportunities. So to me, Ashley, by far, played the best game on this season. And there you have it. Those are my player rankings for Big Brother 27. You can let me know what you think about it, especially you live feeders. Let me know if my rankings are crazy. Like and subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.